All right, hello again and welcome. I'm Stephen Brown, Assistant Dean for Enrollment at Fordham Law School in New York. This is our third series with this gang of 6 schools, traveling the country virtually, talking about admissions. We talked about financial aid. We've had a few presentations, and we know folks have been admitting early and students have been receiving decisions. So we decided to make this our last of 2020 presentation. Stay tuned in 2021, but the last of the 2020 presentations on what happens after I get admitted. What do I do now? The deadline for all but early decision schools is April 15th in terms of deposit deadlines. What am I doing between now and April 15th? How am I going to make this happen? How can I take advantage of the next few months? So we have 6 schools here. From my screen, Assistant Dean Sean McShay from Boston College University School of Law up in Boston. We have Brooke Sandoval, Associate Director of Admissions from American University in DC. University of Southern California Gould School, Assistant Dean David Kirshner. Assistant Dean Johan Lee from Northwestern in Chicago, and Assistant Dean Greg Canada from Indiana University, the Maurer School of Law. We're going to talk about, back to basics. Then we're going to talk about comparing schools, visiting schools virtually, some career outcomes, alumni, talk about financial aid and preparation for law school. So we're going to get started. We have a Q&A. You can see that at the bottom. We already have, as you may or may not have noticed in the registration, we've already asked some questions, and we have a bunch of questions that we are going to ask our panelists, and feel free to add additional questions. One thing I will ask, because you are future law students, try to keep on point a little bit. The questions should be making sense for the presenters. We are all going to have our own individual Zoom rooms afterwards, and we'll post that information at the end. And you can come visit us individually or in small groups. And the Zoom rooms are kind of like a table at a forum or a presentation where you get a chance to stump the admissions folks and ask the hard questions. But those are the questions that would be more appropriate to the school. Some of you in the questions were asking very school specific questions. I'm not going to ask them now. Take advantage of the Zoom rooms afterwards. Okay, so let's kick this off with kind of the basic topics of rethinking law school and why are you here and all of that good stuff with Brooke Sandoval from American.
Great, thank you so much, Dean Brown. Excited to be here with you all today with my co-panelists, and we're excited to have you all joining us on a Tuesday afternoon, evening, morning, depending on where you're located. And so we thought with this panel, we're gonna sort of kick it off with, why do you want to go to law school? I mean, obviously, if at this stage of the process, as an admitted student, or when you're an admitted student, you've already done a little bit of that processing and sort of consideration. But after you're admitted, it's also a time to maybe sort of rethink. Obviously, you've got some options at the point when you're trying to make a decision about where to attend. But you also might be in the decision-making process of, is it a good time to attend now? Should I be waiting? Sort of things to think about and sort of consider. Obviously, there are many benefits of attaining a law degree. You have the ability to advocate for others, possibly during their best and worst moments, right? You might have clients that are looking to adopt a child or to incorporate a business, or maybe they have an invention that they're getting a patent for. So these are all things that a lawyer can assist them with. You also might be assisting clients maybe in circumstances that are not so exciting or great. Maybe they're facing a prison sentence or they're having to deal with a divorce. But all of these situations are where people will need attorneys and advocates on behalf of their situations. Also in law school, you're going to obviously hone your writing skills and your negotiation skills, and that'll benefit you in any kind of career. You can also work on drafting policy. We have a lot of students, obviously, since we're based in DC, that might have goals to work in government, goals to work on legislation, and sort of public service oriented things. And as an attorney, it can get you a foot in the door in different government agencies with with their honors programs. For those of you who already have careers, you might be looking to expand your network, and a law degree can help you do that. So take time to consider now, why you're pursuing law school sort of at this point. If it could be to start a first career, you might be still in undergraduate school looking to jumpstart a first career. It could be elevating a current career path, something you're currently doing, but it'll give you that credential to sort of move a little bit further in that career. Or it could be that you're looking to switch careers completely. Maybe you're not doing anything in the legal field at all, and you're looking to completely switch to that. So again, this is a time even after you've been admitted to sort of rethink that process and sort of reconfirm your commitment. The other thing too is you might want to ask yourself, am I mentally ready to pursue a rigorous academic program? For some applicants that might be in their senior year of college when they're applying, after they've heard they've been admitted, it might be like, wow, I just wrote my honors thesis. I might need to take a brain break for a year and maybe not go right into law school. So you need to be ready, mentally prepared to pursue a rigorous program. Other things too to think about if you are working full-time now and looking to go into law school full-time, you need to also just be preparing to sort of wrap things up at your job, and also keeping in mind you won't have that income from your job. So thinking about living like a student again, which might be a little different for people that have been out working for a while and have had an income and a certain kind of lifestyle. So sort of keeping that in mind as well. And those for you that are looking to maybe go to a part-time program and maintain your full-time job, this is the time also after you're admitted and you know your options to really have those conversations with your employers to manage their expectations, that you're going to have to leave work on time to be in class, so that you may need some time off during final exams, and sort of balancing work if you're working full time and maybe going to law school part time. So these are all things to sort of consider. Once you have your options, you have a better sense of where you might be geographically, but also what is going to be, what your schedule might look like, or, what the requirements are going to be for you that first year. So you'll have a better sense and really sort of explore your options. The other things too to think about is you might want to be having conversations with family and friends. Obviously they're going to be excited that you're admitted to law school, but sort of prepping them too for you going on to law school. If you have a partner or spouse, if you have children, if you have, roommates, family members that are in close contact every single day, you're going to need to also let them know that your focus is going to have to shift to law school. It's not that you're not going to ever see your family, but you need to also help sort of manage their expectations of your time and your time commitment, and still obviously setting time aside for family and friends is important, but you also may need to prep them for what the time commitment is going to be for while you're in law school. So these are all things to sort of think about. And then also be sure you're going into the decision-making process, having researched the options, right? Researching all the schools that you've been admitted to. Obviously, it's great to research schools before you're applying, but once you have those offers, then you're really going to sort of drill down and ask some of these questions that we're going to talk about later in this session, to sort of see what are the options, what's offered at that school, what are the outcomes for individual schools, and that'll make you a better prepared when you're trying to make a decision and where you're trying to decide where you want to submit a deposit, or if you're submitting multiple deposits. Again, you want to narrow that down because it can be expensive when you're submitting deposits. The other thing to maybe think about, is it more important for you to go to law school in general, or are you really focused on attending a very specific law school, or are you really focused on attending law school in a specific geographic area? So those are things to also sort of think about. Some people might be a little bit more focused on a specific region of the country for either family reasons or just that's a part of the country they want to live in. Other people might be a little bit more flexible in where they can live, and so they might look at other factors within the schools where they're admitted. But that's something to sort of, again, sort of reconsider when you're looking at your options of where you've been admitted. And then also think about your professional goals. Obviously, you want to be a lawyer, otherwise you wouldn't be applying to law school. But you might have, and not that everybody will, but you might have a sense of sort of what is your long-term professional goal, Are you looking to work in the private sector? Are you looking to work in the public sector or government, public interest? Are you looking to start your own business? And which of the schools where you've been admitted will sort of help you reach those long-term professional goals. And so that's why we're doing this panel today. So you can kind of get a sense of what things you need to be considering. It's going to be unique to each person, right? What might be important to one person might not be important at all to another candidate. So these are just things to sort of rethink in this process once you do have your admissions offers. So I'll leave it there. And I know there might be some questions a little bit later on.
Actually, I'll jump in with a question now. What if I don't know what I want to do? Is it okay to start law school not quite knowing I want to do something with social justice?
Yeah, and that's going to be pretty common that students won't necessarily know, or it's not uncommon for someone to come in knowing exactly what they want to do and then completely change their mind when they're in law school. They might take one course with one specific professor and it takes them on a whole different trajectory. And that's fine too. You know, what you want to do is then look for schools that will offer courses or opportunities in a variety of areas that might be of interest to you. So again, it's not that you initially have to know, you just have to be ready to pursue a legal education and that you want sort of that end product of a law degree. But a lot of law is very interrelated anyways. You know, a client doesn't always come to you with saying, this is a specific issue, I want you to solve it. It's more of like, I have an issue. It might be tangential to like immigration issues. It might be tangential to like, you know, criminal activity. You know, I mean, there's lots of things that are going to be interrelated. So I think people that have multiple interests are still going to be fine in law school. That's what that first year curriculum is going to be pretty standard at most law schools. And then in your upper levels, when you start picking classes that might be a little bit more of interest to you and sort of figure that out. But yeah, there'll be plenty of opportunity to also explore that while you're in law school.
Thank you. There'll be more questions later, probably. Dean Canada, I've been admitted to all the schools that I wanted to be admitted to, and I really didn't pay much attention kind of in the process. I was just applying to schools. What do I do now? How do I compare these schools?
Oh, well, isn't that the $1,000,000 question? There are a lot of things I can tell you in the short time. I probably won't be able to cover it all. Usually I advise students to close their eyes and just throw darts at a dartboard, and wherever it lands, that typically is where you should go to law school. But no, in all seriousness, if you're admitted to any of our law schools, you know, there's a good chance that you'll be in an viable situation to have to decide between many really incredible law programs. Now, the law school visit, which is usually an excellent way for you to make a tough decision between many appealing law programs, that will be discussed a little bit later on. So I won't talk about the importance of that in making the decision. Rather, I want to help frame your decision in a few important ways. It's been my experience that the decision for where you end up going to law school is really premised on 4 factors. The first is prestige. The second is price. The fourth is place, and the third is place, and the fourth is product. The 4 Ps, as you call it. Now, prestige, you know, a lot of times our immediate thought is that this will go to the U.S. News rankings, and I do think that that does play a part in terms of giving you a picture of a law school's prestige. I do think it's an important factor for many students. But the prestige isn't captured simply by the U.S. News rankings, and it's important as you investigate the law schools, you not look at how they may be looked on in a ranking service, but also how the law school is viewed in a given location or in a given market, or even a given area of study. So your investigation for the prestige or the reputation should look at the U.S. News, of course, but look at specialty rankings, look at employment within markets. These will all kind of give you an idea about the law school's prestige. And again, a very important part of your evaluation. The second, of course, is price. Now, price isn't simply how much you're going to be willing to pay, but it's also the cost of attendance. It's how much how much will you be looking to spend minus the scholarship offers you're getting from each of our schools. What does that look like for you? Very important consideration. Many students these days are very debt averse, and they're looking at every way to minimize the cost. And that should be an important thing to be considered when you're looking at prestige. Typically, students who get into very prestigious schools may not get the larger scholarships. And so there's usually that negotiation a student must make when deciding where to attend. The third thing I would say, of course, is place. Now, place is not just location, and location's important. Maybe with the exception of very few schools, most alumni for a given law school will be working within 100 miles of that law school. So if you know, for example, that you really have your eye set on a specific location, and there's a law school that really meets all the things that you look for in the law school, it may make a lot of sense based upon the importance of place that you attend that law school. But place is more than just its geographical location and where law school tends to send its alums. Place also represents the school's ethos, literally what takes place at the law school. This is sometimes something you will be able to discern when you go visit the law school physically, but unfortunately, as you know, that won't be possible for many of you all this spring. Nonetheless, it's still very important for you to get a sense about what the place really is like. That means everything from what the students experience inside the classroom as well as what their life is like outside the classroom. Do you want to be in an urban environment or a big university, town? The difference in life outside the classroom could be noticeably different depending on those locations. Also, the faculty ratio, is it a large law school? Is it small? This is all part of the place, the ethos of a law school that I think is very important in everyone's consideration. Commute, sometimes thinking about what housing situations, like what will be the day-to-day inside and outside the law school classroom. The last thing is product. And this is typically kind of a course way of saying your courses, your concentrations, your clinical opportunities, your student services. These are all very important considerations as well. There's a lot that we do to market our concentrations and clinics and so forth. And it's important that you be able to determine really just the importance that these concentrations will play in your decisions. I can't say ahead of time that you need to go to a school with a strong IP program because there's a good chance you may not decide to go IP down the road. So a lot of these things are contingent upon where you are in the decision-making process. And I'll tell you one thing, there is a big shift, and I bet my colleagues will agree, there is a shift that takes place once you apply to a school and then once you get admitted. Factors start to shift as well. The importance starts. Cost might not have been a big factor for you prior to admission, but now that you admit it, it becomes much more important. These 4 Ps will all start shifting depending on a number of factors once you get admitted. I cannot give you there's an absolute hierarchy in the way that you should order these Ps. A lot of students will put prestige over price, they'll put it over product, or they'll put it over place. But we also know that some students will be graduating with incredible amounts of debt. And therefore, they will not want to go to perhaps the most prestigious law school they get into, which will require them to pay the most amount of money. So there's always an individual calculus that's involved in deciding where you want to go to law school. But it's important that you anchor them within those 4 Ps. And then order those Ps based upon where you are at this point. For example, if I'm interested in going into public interest law, is it really important that I go to the highest ranked law school that's going to require me to pay the most amount of money? If I'm not really sure where I want to go, but I got into a very prestigious law school and I know there's a tendency to have more mobility with that degree, maybe I want to, my indecision about where I want to practice or what I want to do will be best addressed or best met by a school that will give me more options, at least out at the front gates. Now, I oftentimes meet with admitted students here at the law school, and I'm oftentimes talking to them about where they are at in the application process. And I oftentimes find that they're considering these 4 Ps in a variety of different manners. And this is the wisdom that I'll leave with you all at this point. Typically, what you all will do when you're deciding what law school you'll go to, and that is, of course, with the exception of those who know right away that they're going to go to the school that got them in, and this is for the 98% of you who simply are making that tough decision, you didn't get into that dream school, is what I sometimes tell them to do is, of course, they have the Excel spreadsheet I was just referring to, and of course, they've ordered them in the way that makes the most sense of them. They put place on top of price, and they did all this, and they're staring at that Excel spreadsheet, and they're staring, and they're talking to their friends, and they're talking to their pre-law advisor, and they're still scratching their head. They're not really sure where they want to go. I think this is all part of the process. It's all part of the process, and it's important to know 2 things. You're going to do really well no matter where you go. I think you should. It's not like if I go behind that closed door, it's it's a dungeon and it's just no way out of it. Or if I go that way, it's the pearly gates. I don't want you to kind of feel as if this decision, it's this big either or. Sometimes you're really trying to select the best of really incredible opportunities. So take a little bit of pressure off yourself. The second thing, and this is perhaps the most important thing, is that a lot of times when it comes to making a decision like this, we place a premium on the head, on the intellect, and that's what gives us these nice elaborate spreadsheets with Excel spreadsheets with pivot tables and all this. Oh, if I go here and I go here, and they're still confounded as to where they want to go to law school. My recommendation to those students is twofold. One, of course, be mindful you're going to do incredibly well no matter where you go. Take that out. Secondly, put it away. Put it away. Put that Excel spreadsheet away for 48 hours. Don't think about it. Don't talk to a friend. Don't mention anything about where you want to go to law school next year. And on that third day, when you wake up in the morning, listen. And that voice in your head, or perhaps the voice in your heart, will probably be whispering in your ear the school that you should to attend. And what I guess I'm saying is that as much emphasis we place on the head when it comes to making these important decisions, ultimately it will be your heart that makes the cut. Don't ignore the heart in the decision-making process.
Thank you, but that makes it hard for me to ask the question that I'm going to ask of you. Today is a deadline for schools to submit their 509 reports and have them posted on their websites. And we'll hear more about the career services. Those aren't coming out today. It's the general information. Could you, in no more than 60 seconds or so, just touch on useful information on the school's general 509?
I think that the 509 report, you're talking about admissions and employment information is very important. Under ABA disclosures on every law school's website is a required disclosures that give law students incredible information about not only the incoming student body, the typical incoming student body. You're talking also about who will be enrolling, what kind of debt load these students will have. Then you're also talking about employment, where students are going. All this information is on the website and is part of the Excel spreadsheet that you should be putting together. Employment stats are helpful, but they should not be determinative. Simply because we don't have a large number of students who are working, for example, in LA, isn't a suggestion, therefore, LA is no longer a place for someone who wants to go to Maurer. It's all about trying to contextualize the information that every law school will have in front of you. So I apologize for not including those ABA required disclosures in terms of what students need to do to kind of investigate those X's and O's that they need to populate in these Excel spreadsheets. But take a look closely at those ABA disclosures on the school's website.
Thank you very much. Moving right along, it's a COVID world. And for some of us, certainly I'll use me at Fordham in New York as an example, we're still actively discouraging other than students and faculty to being on campus. Dean McShay, how are we ever going to figure this out? Where do I want to attend? What happened last year? How should I be thinking through some of these? What are some resources I should be looking for before I make that commitment to the school?
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. And yes, the pandemic has shaped our lives and experience over the last year or so in various ways. And one of the key decision makers for many students was the ability to visit a campus, speak with people in a face-to-face format, attend various events that the school would host either on campus, in their city, in your city, just a whole lot of in-person experiences to really bring life to the materials that you provided through the admissions process. And so what happened last year? For the most part, law schools immediately went into response mode, right? Many of us were engaged in, bringing in our classes and in the midst of hosting and planning and securing our admitted student day events, and we were forced to deliver them in a different way. Many of us probably have, tremendous, uptick and in terms of students who ultimately make a decision after visiting a campus, we all probably do fairly well in that category. You have the offer, you have your package. Now you visited campus to get a sense of, how it all works together. And usually students are able to walk away from each of our institutions feeling like they've made the right decision about where they want to attend law school. And so that's different now. And so what did we do last year? Again, we immediately shifted into action. We, at that time, tried to then convert probably all of our in person experiences into things that we were just hosting on Zoom or other similar platforms, right? And I think for some that went, better than others, right? We were in a space where we were just trying to transition. We were trying to get you information, and we didn't want anything to fall between the cracks. But I think as we look at this year, things are very different. And the same holds true for the academic experience. Again, the academic experience was similar, right? We just tried to shift that in person experience into an online experience. But what happened over the summer? We all got training, we got the right platforms, we learned how to, have online classes and make them engaging, just as engaging as in-person experiences. We, put together lots of activities and events for people to get to know one another. We showcased our environments in ways that perhaps we hadn't done before. And if we did do them before, it took a backseat to the in-person experience versus, the way that we had to deliver it for this particular year. So many of us also, in terms of last year, we were all operating under various models. Some schools were completely virtual. Some schools were in person, and some schools had hybrids. And then some schools changed in the middle of their plan and had to adjust to whatever their new reality was. What I am getting from many law students that I've heard from, and even undergraduate students, because you too have gone through this experience, is that, you thought it was going to be a lot worse than it was. And for many, it was actually pretty wonderful because it added some flexibility into the way that you were able to study. It took out the commute. There were all of these other things and other variables and factors that were now a part of the equation that had never been the part of a traditional JD conversation. We were traditionally offered for those who have full time, a 3-year program, 8 a.m. to 5 or 6 p.m. There are part time programs which give you, and there's variations of that. There's some programs that incorporate evenings. Most incorporate evenings. There's some that incorporate Saturdays. There are some that, that incorporate summers. So you have all these different varieties and ways in which the legal education is offered. And so now we're moving forward with our next cycle with all of these different options and all of these different resources in place to be able to make sure that you get the information that you need. And so thinking about things that are there. So first, I do want to point out some general resources. You've just learned from Steve and Greg about the ABA Standard 509s. That's general resources, general information that perhaps might be of interest to you. But there are admissions workshops. There are, specialized presentations. It might be open symposia that a particular school that you've been admitted to is hosting, and you're welcome to be a part of that experience, right? So be sure to check out schools' events pages just to see what's going on in your neighborhood or at the schools that you're interested in. And maybe that would be an opportunity to just see, to really get more insight into how that community operates and what are some of the topics that they're willing to cover as a community to move forward on whatever issues there might be. Um, I know that there have been around the country, there have been lots of conversations with senior leaderships. So, not just the dean of the law school giving a big address, although that happens as well, but maybe it's the entire senior leadership, the dean of academics, the deans of clinical services, career services, enrollment managers, admissions, all together having a conversation about how they have, supported students through the various things that they are responsible for, and how that has helped the overall law school community. And then, of course, there are standardized materials like our view books and quick fact sheets, all of those things. They're all in electronic form right now. So don't hesitate to pick up those things. But then thinking about the actual campus feel and the campus spirit, virtual tours. We're all offering virtual tours right now, and we're doing it in a number of different ways. Some of us have interactive tours that live on our page. When you click a particular, environment, it wakes up and tells you all about that, and there's live video and embedded, and you get to see the community in action. Others have still photos. Some have students who were a part of the in-person experience who walk around with their smartphones, and they'll, showing you different spaces that they have available. And again, that's going to be based upon, where that school is, the type of, model that they are operating under, right now. So again, don't penalize a school if they just have a picture model up. They might be in an environment where they simply can't, where they are completely virtual and they don't have people on campus. And again, that's for your safety and for the safety of all of those that are around you. See if there are options for class visits. And while I know specifically at my institution, we didn't do class visits for the fall, but we certainly have mechanisms in place to do that for the spring. And so that might be, again, one way for you to dive into, the classroom experience. And again, be mindful that if you're joining a classroom visit, this is still a real and a live experience for our students. So remember, you're not the focal point of that experience, but you get to enjoy that particular experience. So, by all stretches of the imagination, don't monopolize the time of the class with a whole host of questions. But what I found in many occasions is that the faculty members will stay around so that if you do have questions at the end, just as they did in the in-person experience, they make time to answer questions of visitors and people that they have joining them. So again, that might be a way to approach that particular situation. Many teams are offering Q&A sessions, of course, with your financial aid and admissions teams, but also other stakeholders, career services, clerkships, public interest, all these different programs. You'll find that many of those different stakeholders are offering, Q&A sessions at various points throughout the semester, and certainly throughout the spring semester when you're going to be making your decisions. We all have YouTube channels where we've recorded events that have taken place on our campuses, where we have promotional videos about our philosophies, our teaching mechanisms, our community, our neighborhoods. So again, another resource that is at your disposal to help you fine tune some of the questions that might be important for you in making that decision. And all of this is leading up to, and perhaps would be included in, admitted student events. Those admitted student events could happen at any point for any duration, and we will all be hosting them because we want to make sure that you get the information that you need. Those events will include ways to engage with current students, faculty, administration, and staff. Alumni will be a part of those events. And so rest assured that you will have plenty of options and opportunities to get additional information. But what I would like to impress upon you is to attend those experiences. I know that many of you have limited time frames in which you can engage with some of this, especially given your lives and your current situations. But remember that this is an investment, and this is a major component of the next 3 or 4 years of your life, depending upon the type of program that you're engaged in, or perhaps longer if you decide to continue your legal education with advanced degrees. So with that in mind, Make sure that you utilize all of those resources that I've mentioned. And most importantly, make sure you utilize us. We do this. This is our profession. We are happy to help you navigate through some of the questions, and we're also the right people to help you connect with various members of the community that will enable you to get to the types of answers that you need. So as it relates to some of the questions that you might be thinking about in participating with any of these virtual events, perhaps you will ask questions of the students about their experience, about how did they go about finding their jobs? Did they find career services to be helpful in that journey? And bear in mind, for all of you, career services is one of many options and one of many vehicles that students utilize to find their jobs, right? And for all of our institutions, I feel pretty comfortable in saying that it's probably an all hands on deck type of approach. Yes, we have structured programs through career services, but your faculty, your peers, alumni, friends of the institution you decide to attend, all of those resources, all of those stakeholders are going to be helping you with that journey. And so that's why a lot of students are invested in trying to get to know, what's the alumni pool like? What are these career services, things like, because these are going to be resources to help you get to those answers. Perhaps you have questions about the types of support mechanisms that an institution has in place. Those support mechanisms might be a function of academic supports and strategies, courses, tutoring opportunities, academic success or academic excellence programs. They might be based upon, specific groups or audiences. And so what kind of resources does the institution have in that regard? But the resource question might also stretch over into the other side of this, which is the financial resources. And again, I'm not going to touch too much on that, but these are some of the questions that you might ask yourself as you are diving into this decision process. And the final questions are, how engaged are the alums? How often are they on campus? What do your students typically do in the public or private sector? How do I get on journals? What is that process? When do I apply? Or also, how do I get involved in clinical opportunities? Or when do I get involved in student groups, right? All of those particular things might be questions traditionally for journals right after your first year, right? After you've taken your finals. And there might be some nuance at every institution. So you have to do your homework here. But traditionally at the end of your finals, the board for the law review of the different journals will give you a problem to solve, and they'll give you a time frame and the rubrics in which to complete that project. And once you're done with it, you'll submit your materials, and it will go up for review, and they'll make their decisions probably in late summer or early fall, right? Then as it relates to clinics are typically an upper level experience. So perhaps in some time beyond the first year, in your second or third year, remember that clinics, which are these hands-on experiences, and in most cases, these clinical programs might have live clients that you are servicing. They may have prerequisites. And so you have to get those prerequisites done for some of those clinics. And then the final thing is for student groups. For some institutions, you can get started with them as early as your first day. And in many instances, the school might have an open fair or something where you can get involved, where you can learn more about the opportunities that are available and you can get involved. So again, I know that's a whole lot of information to digest, but I just wanted you to know that there are a lot of resources to help you in making the best decision. So I'm happy to answer additional questions along that line. So thank you.
Well, Dean McShay, thank you for coordinating this. And I guess as part of coordinating, you got to sneak peek at all the questions. And I think you answered a whole lot of the questions that were out there, kind of in this context of trying to figure out what these schools are really like, trying to figure out the culture of the law schools. So that was just jam-packed with information. Thank you.
You're
We're
welcome.
going to move right along to Dean Kirshner, talking about career outcomes and alumni, and going a little more in depth into that.
Sure, yeah. So I get to talk about the topic that I presume is driving most of you to attend law school, and that is that's for jobs upon graduation. Dean Canada touched on this a bit in his remarks, and I'm going to dive a little bit deeper on career outcomes and alumni engagement, which is a significant part of the law school experience. And one of the pieces I really wanted to spend some time on is to talk more about location. As Greg mentioned, the vast majority of law school graduates are going to have their first job out of law school within 100 miles of their law school location. There are certainly exceptions to this rule. You can probably think of some of them. A few start with H, Y, and S, but by and large, that's a pretty good rule of thumb to think of. And the rationale behind that tends to make sense. So, of course, the COVID world has changed the way a lot of things are done. But I think, right, we all believe that this pandemic will end. And when the pandemic ends, in-person mixers and networking events and gatherings are all going to once again take place. So, as a law student in a particular city, you have an opportunity to attend networking and mixing events with practicing attorneys. Most cities have local bar associations. In Los Angeles, the LA County Bar Association and the Beverly Hills Bar Association are the two big ones. I see, Stephen there with his New York City Bar Association. And these associations all give law students either tremendous discounts or free memberships. So you can take advantage of that. And you start networking and rubbing elbows with practicing attorneys in the cities where you're going to law school. It's certainly easier to attend a New York City bar function if you're at Fordham than it is if you're at USC, and vice versa. Certainly easier to meet and network with practicing attorneys in Los Angeles if you're going to law school in Los Angeles. So that 100-mile kind of, I'm not going to say rule because it's not a rule, but that kind of 100-mile guidance is largely due to the networking that takes place while you're in law school. And unfortunately, there's no academic credit given for networking, but in many ways, networking is going to be just as important, if not more important, than the substantive courses that you take in law school. So how do you network? And and we understand that for many of you, networking does not come natural. A lot of us are introverts. Maybe we're extroverted introverts, but in some way, shape, or form, we have introverted tendencies. So how do you get used to networking? And that's where alumni networks can be incredibly important, because all of us have groups of alumni who aren't just there to help you find employment, but who are there to help mentor and guide you through law school. And all of us have career services offices, and I suspect they all put on mock networking panels, mock networking nights, mock interviews, and who conducts these? More often than not, it's alumni conducting these. It's alumni taking time out of their practice and out of their schedules to conduct these opportunities for you as a current student. Because again, for many of you, networking will be an acquired skill. And you want to make sure that the law school you choose to attend has an engaged and active alumni network who are willing to afford you those opportunities. And I'm fairly certain that all of us on this webinar today can say our schools certainly do have that type of alumni network, right? So I've talked a little bit now more about location and about networking, and there are a few other factors I wanted to touch upon. Where do you get this information? How do you know what kind of alumni are graduating from the law schools you're considering? How do you know what kind of practices they're engaged in? And beyond that, how important should that factor into your decision-making process? Because that is what we're talking about today. So I'd say it's good to understand if particular schools send alumni into particular types of practice, but it's also good to remember that what you think you may want to do could change. And for a lot of law students, it does change. So I hear a lot, and probably no surprise given our location in Los Angeles, a lot of students come in wanting to go into entertainment law. And we have the discussion number one, do you understand what exactly is entertainment law, right? Entertainment law is a combination of labor and employment and contracts, and negotiation. So it's having that understanding, but it's also then the recognition, well, what path do entertainment attorneys take, right? And most of them follow a fairly predictable path where they work at a big law firm, they get their training at a big law firm, and then they end up in-house somewhere. So, to the extent that you have an idea of what path you may want to take, then it could be important to know, okay, so what kind of employment do graduates from this school pursue? Are they pursuing big law? Are they getting jobs at medium-sized firms? Are they getting jobs at small firms? How many are going into public interest work? How many are going into government work? And if you're among the small group who want to pursue academia, how many are going into academia after law school? The good news is that those stats, those statistics are published very clearly by law schools each year. The ABA 509s are one source of that information, but even more detail comes in the form of, it's called the NALP report. And each law school makes NALP reports available. NALP is the National Association for Legal Placement. Those reports detail what type of practice, so firm, public interest, government, nonprofit. It also details what geographic region are these graduates going into, are these alumni going into? And I saw there was a question about that. So NALP reports can give you a sense of not only what type of practice, but where. For those of you, who really do want to pursue big law, right? Then yes, there are some schools that place more of their students into big law than others. If there are some of you who really want to clerk for a Supreme Court justice or go into academia, there certainly are certain schools that are known feeders to the Supreme Court and to academia. So to the extent that you may have a really strong and somewhat narrow idea of what you want to do, don't let that be the deciding factor, but go in with eyes wide open. Go in knowing what the different schools you're considering will offer, when it comes to that. So let's use big law, for example, right? And the good news is most large firms and even many smaller firms, on their websites, you can filter their attorneys by law school, right? By law school that they graduated from. So, if you want to work at Wachtell in New York City, you go to their website and you see, has someone from my law school ever practiced at Wachtell? The odds are, if you don't see someone there, it's going to be a significant uphill challenge for you to land a job at that firm. Vice versa, if you want to work at Gibson Dunn in San Francisco, right? You visit their website and you filter their attorneys by law school, and you can get some really good information. Knowledge is power, right? So at the end of the day, all of us want you to arm yourselves with that knowledge to help you make the most informed decisions. And so I think that's how outcomes and alumni engagement all work together, because your outcomes are going to be stronger the more engaged alumni you have at whichever school you attend. So please arm yourselves with that knowledge, and we look forward to answering your questions.
So we have two quick questions. Any idea on sources of information on government attorneys and where they went to law school, whether it's federal, state, local, or tribal?
Yeah, so you know what, that's a good question, and that is one where I would ask my career services dean if she was here. But if any of you know, is there a centralized resource to garner that information? I mean, I would think most career services offices, I know mine would provide that information if an admitted student wanted it. I don't know if there's a larger clearinghouse that compares law schools side by side. So I'm seeing a bunch of heads. So I guess my advice there would be either reach out to the career services office or reach out to the admissions office, and the admissions office can try to gather that information.
Yeah, and sometimes just reaching out to the organization as well. The organization may be able to tell you some of that. Just another kind of quick question, but is there a way to use alumni in the decision process? Kind of look advice to advice from school alumni before you decide to enroll there. You talked a lot about networking. Can you kind of network before law school?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say absolutely. I know different schools approach it in different ways, but behind our admitted student portal, we have an entire section of alumni who have volunteered to make their profiles and contact information available to admitted students. Some of them have even recorded video clips introducing themselves. And so I suspect we're not the only law school that does that. So certainly, I think that's a wonderful idea, is to try and reach out to alumni at the schools you've been admitted to.
Great, thank you. So as we move forward in time, I'm actually up next, and we're seeing lots of questions in the pre-chat, lots of questions in the current questions and answers about financing. What's this all about? So it gets back to some of the early things that we were talking about kind of at the beginning. Why do I want to go to law school? What am I looking to get out of this? What works? What is this investment about? Because law school is an investment. 30 years ago, if you didn't know what you wanted to do in life, go to law school, but tuition was $5,000 a year. That's very different now. Then in 1986, the most you could borrow for law school was $24,000 for all 3 years combined. So that world has changed. So we really encourage you to think of law school as an investment. What do I want to do? Will this school help me to achieve my long-term goals, and at what cost? And that's critical as you're considering that. So tons and tons of questions about negotiating scholarships. And you're not going to be happy with the answer, but I'll offer it anyway. Maybe. It depends on the school. There are scholarships come in maybe 3 general flavors: need, merit, and other. So why are you receiving the scholarship from a school? Is it on a need basis? So then the appeal is on a need basis. Is it on a merit basis? Is it on an other basis? Maybe diversity, geographic, racial, and ethnic. Maybe on the basis of public interest or interest areas where you're attending law school. So you need to know that, because if you're receiving a public interest scholarship at one school and another school doesn't have it, there's going to be a tough match there. So listen to the schools. There are schools out there who encourage negotiation of scholarships, and on their admitted student website, they tell you exactly how to do it. And there are other schools, and I'm in that other school, that group of other schools, who said, we make our best offer first. Check in, make sure we didn't make a mistake, because that does happen. But we want to treat similarly situated students similarly. And that's go. So you can write wonderful appeals letters to the school, and they'll say, yes, you are the greatest applicant has ever lived, but full tuition is our top award, or half tuition is our top award, or we've made that best offer. So that becomes critical. Pay attention to the schools. Some schools will say, if you're appealing, send us kind of similar schools, whether it's similar ranking or similar quality of students, which are not necessarily the same. But that becomes important in the decision. Know where you stand and know where the schools stand. Oftentimes for merit scholarship, schools are focusing on very strong students for that school. So it may be that you have a full tuition scholarship at a school, and maybe that was your safety school, maybe not, and you're appealing to your REACH school that you got into, and saying, well, this other school gave me a full tuition scholarship. If you appeal nicely, we won't be insulted, but know that you occupy a different place. I mean, it's just reality. You occupy a different place in those schools. If you are in the top of one class and bottom of the other, you will probably get different merit awards. Know that schools who are giving need-based awards may use different formulas, may be looking to different things in need. So again, pay attention to that. Is it worth negotiating? If the school says they negotiate, certainly. How to prepare for it, and again, know where you stand in the pool. Be nice. And I can't overemphasize that because yeah, I am too good for your school and you are my safety. And if you don't give me full tuition, I'm not coming. So, and I get this, and you'll see it. And thank you very much. I am going to withdraw you from our class because we won't be able to offer you a full tuition scholarship. And that's how it goes. So that's critical in the process. Debt. Is the debt worth it for the outcomes you're looking at? So there are a few questions on public service loan forgiveness. Schools do offer some of their own public service loan forgiveness programs, maybe called LRAP programs. We're all different. 100 schools offer programs. And the details are dramatic, ranging from $1 million a year to $2,000 a year. So if you're interested in that, pay attention to what the schools are offering. Federal loan forgiveness is a program that's out there. If you're looking to do government or public service work, look into some of the details of that program. It's been getting a lot of bad press recently. Part of it is because people weren't meeting some of the basic criteria, the right loans, the right repayment plan, 120, the right job, and 120 months. So take a look at that, because that may inform your decision. It may be that you can go to your dream school because public service loan forgiveness is there. So that's important. And there are a variety of repayment plans for that. And is the debt worth it for you? So that's financing kind of in a nutshell. And now Dean Lee is going to take us into what should I be doing? Should I be, there are some questions. Should I be taking courses? Should I be taking online courses? Should I be buying books? What should I be reading? I'm excited. I start law school in only 9 months. What do I need to do before I get there?
Thank you, Dean Brown. So what I'm going to go over is basically you have your decision made, and it's basically you've paid down your tuition deposit if it's a school that requires a tuition deposit, or you've signed that agreement to go to whatever school that is. And so we're talking about we're in April, maybe May, and what are my next steps? How do I as an incoming 1L prepare for law school? So now that I've decided, how do I on-ramp? And I think the first most important thing is to develop a transition timeline. And for those that are employed and have a job, that means, when do I give notice? When do I tell my employer that I am finally going to law school starting August or September? When am I going to do that? And I think there are a lot of different levers for that particular decision. One is, obviously, it's just been discussed previously. Do you need the money? Do you need whatever salary you earn from that particular job? How long, and do you have time to take off? Do you want to travel the world one last time for a few weeks? Do you want to hike Mount Kilimanjaro because that's something you've always wanted to do? So I think developing a transition timeline, starting with when do you give notice with your employer, is probably the most important thing. And while you're trying to figure that out, the second thing you should consider is deferrals. And I bring that up because a lot of different schools have various different deferral policies, whether that be open deferrals up to the time of matriculation, to actual set deadlines from when you can request a deferral. I know some schools have deadlines in the beginning of June or at the end of May, where you have to, that's the deadline where you can request a deferral. And if you don't request a deferral by that particular date, you're kind of out of luck. So with the deferral question in mind, figure out when you're going to give notice. And then also think about where you're moving to. Because whether it is a quote unquote college town or a city, a metropolitan area, different places have different customs with regards to securing an apartment, securing utilities, internet, all those sorts of things. So for example, I know one college town where leases are usually signed 3 months ahead of time. So if that's the case, then you pretty much have to figure that out right after you pay your deposit. I know for us here in the city of Chicago, if you're a tenant, you give 30 days notice. And so the window is much smaller. And so you won't have a good sense of where you need to move to until about maybe July 15th, July 1st to July 15th before we actually start. So figuring out the moving logistics is extremely important. And that'll dictate how you start finding looking for an apartment. So it's there are, if you're going to a metro area, there's usually apartment locator services. Some universities and some law schools will have their own sort of housing help department. So those are some resources you should engage in. And I think, back to what Dean Brown was saying about financial aid, a lot of people who go to law school will have to take out a loan. And so it's incredibly important that you look over your credit score, you look over your credit history. Just because the loans that you're going to take out are credit based to a certain extent. And you have to make sure that when you're going to law school, you know what your credit score is, you know how you're going to make your credit card payments if you have any payments to make. And you have to make decisions on things like car payments, motorcycle payments, boat payments, and mortgages as well. I remember one time in part of my role as a financial aid counselor, someone an admitted student, a deposit paid, who came in asking me for an increase in their financial aid in order to pay off 2 motorcycles, as well as 2 additional garage spaces for their motorcycles, as well as their car. I kind of scratched my head like, yeah, right. So anyway, so you got to figure out these sort of financial aspects beforehand. I remember seeing questions in the chat with regards to ramp up courses. Things to get pre-law summer courses that get you prepared in order to go to law school. And here is and there's no correct answer to this. I think a lot of it depends on you yourself as a potential law student. Do you feel that you need to take a course in order to sharpen up or to be prepared to start law school? I mean, the end answer is there have been students that have been successful in law school having taken these courses and having not taken these courses. But I think it's very important for you as an incoming 1L to be mentally comfortable with yourself and be in a mindset to succeed. So if that's the case, there are plenty of these courses out there, some of them pro bono, some of them are you definitely have to pay for them. There are more courses now available on YouTube, which just give brief overviews of law. I know the University of Pennsylvania has a decent one on Coursera. So there are a lot of different ways in which you can figure these sort of things out. And I would definitely ask you to contact the school that you've been admitted to see whether or not even they have a program. Like, so for example, at Northwestern, we have 2 different programs that we run over the summer for our incoming 1Ls. So I would definitely ask those questions as well. There are a lot of questions in the chat about the wait list. And since I'm dealing with the summer months before you start law school, I guess I get to quickly deal with the wait list. Basically, like you've determined a transition timeline for you to start law school, you need to determine where in that timeline you're going to basically stop considering other wait lists, or build your timeline around when that waitlist decision would possibly happen. Meaning that a lot of us that keep waitlists will send out notice to folks on the waitlist. When is the last possible date you wish to be considered? And if we do that, please reply back with the absolute last possible date you're willing to be considered. Saying that the last possible date is October 1st, and I give you a call on August 1st, and you say I can't make it because you called too late. Just be upfront and fill out the forms as honestly and truthfully as you can, based on the transition timeline that you've come up with. And so at the end, I want you that there's one last thing I ask all of my incoming students to do, and it sort of wraps back around to what Director Sandoval mentioned earlier. I basically ask all my entering students before they start classes to sit down and write down why they're going to law school. Lately, it's been, you can write it down, you can record it, just do it before you start law school. Why you want to go to law school, what you want to do with a law degree. If you want to be a change agent, why do you want to be a change agent? Basically, what is motivating you to do this step? And then put it away. Save it in a folder on your laptop, just put it away. And there will be a time first semester that you will doubt, why are you going to law school? There will be a time second semester. There will be a time second year and third year where you will doubt, why in the world am I going to law school? And I find it extremely beneficial to take what you wrote down as a 0L or what you recorded and look at it again. And by doing that, it sort of refreshes yourself and lets you continue on with the law school journey. And on that note, I turn it back to you, Dean Brown.
That's actually great advice, because sometimes during the first year, during the second year, students are stressed and it's like, why am I here? And that's a great place to do that. So I think we have time for 2 or 3 more questions, and I'll put it out to let anyone jump in. I think this one's important. When do I have to commit to schools? And the follow-up on that is, what if I sent a deposit into one school today and my school I always wanted at the right price admitted me tomorrow? How do I deal with that? You have a minute.
I'll jump right on that as well. So, in terms of when do I commit, the first piece of information that I would say is before the school's deadline. And you might find that this is a rolling thing, depending upon when you were admitted, depending upon if you are enrolled in any specific scholarship program. So there might be rolling deadlines. So this is something that you certainly want to pay attention to. For the most part, in absence of any special program, April 1 seems to be probably one of the first moments where you might see deadlines happen. But again, remember, special scholarship programs, fellowship programs, early decision, those things are not a part of this standardized grid, and you have to look at the information that the institution has provided, because in many situations, in particular, perhaps particularly this year, where applications are quite high, you might want to be mindful of those deposits, because if you miss those deposits, the opportunity might not be there, right? And so again, I know that seems pretty dire, right? You missed it by a day and your seat is gone. And, we're all human and we try to work with students to the best of our abilities. But we also understand how these things can happen as well. So try not, if you know what you want to do, try not to wait to the last minute to make that decision. And if you really do have questions about another institution that you're holding out for, then reach out to them and let them know what your constraints are. They may be able to help you, they may not be able to help you. The worst case scenario is that they tell you that they can't help you, and so that that you either have to move forward with the decision that you might have to make, by tomorrow at 5 p.m., to make that decision, or that everything else is going to be up in the air, right? And again, I was in this situation a couple of times where I had a couple of students who missed a deposit. I wasn't in a position to give them that offer back, because once we start accepting those offers, once those deposits start coming in, then we know what our budgets look like. And once we know what our budgets look like, if we've hit that magical point where we need to call it quits, then that's what we're going to do. And while I might be able to give you that offer back, the admissions offer back, I might not be able to give you the same level of scholarship that came with it. So deadlines are really important. And again, if you know that you have the right package and you're willing to make that decision and you're comfortable with that decision, then make that decision so that you're not, potentially on that tail end, with no place to land. So when do you commit? When the school kind of recommends that you commit, or when you're ready to within that time frame as well. So I hope that's helpful.
Cool.
Can I just add one other thing too? I think one of the things that's important to think about is saving up for these deposit payments, because some of these are pretty substantial. It's going to be different than what an application fee was, right? So this is money that's going to go into your student account. At American, our deposit is $900 that goes into your student account. That's a substantial amount of money. And so you need to be preparing for that, because your financial aid does not cover that deposit payment. You're not going to get financial aid monies until right before classes start. So these are things to budget for. It may be that some schools have a smaller deposit that might be due in April, and then a larger deposit that might be due in June. So schools will tell you what their deposit amounts are in advance. So you can look on their websites. They also will usually have other admitted student sites. You can usually call the admissions office, even if you're not admitted at that school. If you want to be able to budget for how much am I going to need if I get admitted at that school, you should be budgeting for that now. Because the other thing to keep in mind is, at least at American, and my colleagues can speak for their institutions, we typically don't extend the deadlines for the deposits. We usually say at the point when you're ready to make a financial commitment, you can reach out to us. If we can accommodate a late deposit, we will try to do that. But as Dean McShay was saying, it may be that we've already admitted somebody else in the spot that we were offering you, and because you didn't submit the deposit. So there's not a guarantee for a space past that deposit deadline. So keep that in mind.
Cool. Thank you very much. We are just over. Thank you all for all your words of wisdom. Thank you for the questions. We answered many live, some in the question and answers. We answered many in the chat. Now Dean McShay is going to put up our individual breakout rooms. They are now in the chat. And do we have a slide? And we have a slide as well. Thank you all for coming. We're going to give us all a few minutes, and you too, because we can't be in 2 Zoom sessions at once. But you may want to take a picture of this with your phone. Can't take a picture because so click on the information in the chat. So you open that new document up, and then you'll be able to click on the individual school Zoom links from there, and come join us for a half hour or so, where we can answer more individualized questions about the schools. Thank you again for joining us. We wish you luck. We're all deans and directors of admissions, not denial. We're thrilled to have you here. Thrilled that you are on your way to thinking about, to making that decision of what law school you will be enrolling in the fall. And we wish you all the best.
Awesome. Thank you. And for those looking to join the BC room, give me just a moment until I shut down things here before I go over.
The same for all of us.
Good seeing everybody.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to see everyone.